I'm Don Demmert. I was born in Jersey City, New Jersey. My parents were all of German background. My mother Elizabeth and my father Joseph are both deceased at this point. And I had one other brother, 3 years older than I, and he unfortunately is deceased as of 3 years ago. I went to school in Bloomfield, New Jersey. Finished high school, never went to college. Unfortunately, didn't take advantage of the GI Bill. I was more interested in getting a new car, so I went to work. And at that time, I was a Studebaker fan, had 4 of them. I worked out of high school. I went to work for the Prudential Insurance Company, and I stayed with them about 11 months because I was making $60 a month. And that's an unheard of figure today. I mean, people make that in an hour. And I then left them and went to work for Bendix Corporation, the Eclipse Pioneer Division, and then we were earning like $75 a week. But to do that, we worked 12 hours a day, and we worked 7 days a week with 1 day off. So we worked alternated, like Monday 1 week off, the next week it was Tuesday, next week Wednesday, etc. From there, I enlisted in the aviation cadet program, and when I was accepted, I took the tests and everything in Newark, New Jersey, and actually was then drafted into the Coast Artillery Anti-Aircraft because the aviation cadet quota program had been filled. And so from waiting and taking my basic training in the Coast Artillery Anti-Aircraft, I was then called from there back into the cadet program, went to Nashville, took all the tests, and was qualified, I guess, to become a pilot. Not a hot pilot. I was always liked to drive trucks and buses, so I became a bomber pilot. And took all of my training in the Mississippi Valley Basin, in Dyersburg. It was the transition into B-17, but prior to that, Jackson, Tennessee, Blytheville, Arkansas, and Newport, Arkansas, and Blytheville is where we had advanced and graduated and became a first lieutenant. From there, I was taken with a bunch of guys out to Lincoln, Nebraska to form a crew. And in Lincoln, Nebraska, we got our B-17 and went to Nuts Corner, Ireland via Gander, Newfoundland, and relinquished our plane in Nuts Corner, Ireland, and then was assigned to Snetterton Heath, the 96th Bomb Group, the 359th Bomb Squadron. And that's where we were flying our various missions. And I was shot down on my 9th mission, and 5 of the fellows in the plane got out and 4 were killed. And the 5 that were POWs, I never saw any of them again once we were picked up and taken into Frankfurt, and then on to Stalag Luft 1. There's several stops in between. Now, on May 1st, of course, we were liberated by the Russians, who spent 9 or 10 months there in Stalag Luft 1. And when we were liberated by the Russians on May 1st, it took 12 or 13 days, 14 days before the arrangements were made to get us out of there and then down to Camp Lucky Strike. And we have a wonderful photograph downstairs here now, and I have one at home, of a whole bunch of us guys all dressed up to kill in Paris, AWOL, with fictitious passes. And then we were taken on back to Camp Lucky Strike. We went back to Lucky Strike and then went by ship from Le Havre to Boston and to Fort Devens. And in Boston we got all new clothes, ID and everything, and were transported back to our various original states. In my case, it was back to New Jersey, to Fort Dix. And in Fort Dix, after having had this wonderful 28-day trip by Liberty ship from Le Havre to Boston, where we could sit out in the sun and soak up the rays, and we'd eaten so much food and gotten so fat that we looked not like POWs, but we looked like Floridians that had vacationed the entire war out on a beach someplace. So it was a little misleading getting off the train and coming down the escalator in Newark, seeing my parents, and my brother was on furlough, and coming down with my duffel bag, they look at me and they turn away looking for the typical emaciated POW victim, and didn't believe it when it was me, because I looked so black and so fat. Mm-hmm. So it was a very, very good reunion, a happy reunion for us all. So after the war, I went back to work for Bendix for a short period of time, and then we were all laid off because the Bendix Corporation didn't need the government anymore at that point. They had commercial work coming back in. And so all of the machinist apprentices that worked for Bendix at that point were let out. So I got a job with Monroe Calculating Machine Company in Orange, New Jersey. And that was through a connection, somebody from one of the bands that I had been involved in. I played bass fiddle and did vocals. And this led to my meeting my wife, Hildegard, who had come over in 1956. And I'd been working with Monroe several years then. And when she came over in '56, she came into this country with a green card so she could get a job. Her brother-in-law basically led her into this job. He, being a very frugal German, did not want a freeloading German sister-in-law visiting for a period of time. So he made sure she got out there and got a job, and she got herself a little car, a little Nash. And we met, as I say, in '56, and knew each other, but not seriously, and just co-workers and friends. And when I was going to go to the Brussels Fair in 1958, she had had a vacation, but my parents were encouraging me to have her come along as my interpreter, and it became much more than that. We got engaged overseas, and picked up our wedding rings at a jeweler that she knew in Hamburg, Germany. And when we came home, we had these rings on our fingers. On the left hand in Germany means you're engaged, and then when you get married, you switch them to the right. But in this case, being American, our parents and Hildegard's relatives said nothing when they saw us get off the plane with the wedding rings. It was kind of fun. Yeah. And so then we were getting along at that point in age. When I say getting along, Hildegard was 30 and I was 35. So we were anxious to have a family, and we were very fortunate. Within 3 years, we had 3 sons. It just worked out. They were like a year and a half apart. Our first son was born a year after we were married, just about a year, 11 months. And then each of the other 2 were born like a year and a half after. So we now have 7 grandchildren. Our kids are all doing very well, a lot better than we did at that age. They have everything. And the grandchildren, the oldest now is 16, or 17, just turned 17, and the 2 youngest from 2 different families are 9 years old. And then there are 4 boys and 3 girls. So we have quite a nice mix of grandchildren. So here we are, retired, traveling as much as we can, spending 4 months in Maine and 8 months in Virginia, and very active, fortunately very healthy, as far as we know, and having a wonderful time.
What, do you have any special organizations that you belong to that you're quite active with?
Well, we're very active. We're very active in Colonial Williamsburg. We do a lot of volunteer work there. We're garden tour guides. We also work at the greenhouses that grow much of the vegetation and plant material that is planted periodically, seasonally in Colonial Williamsburg. I volunteer at the William and Mary Greenhouse, and I'm very active still with my music, with singing, although the voice is tired, and Don is getting tired of singing. It doesn't go on forever. Nothing does. It's interesting. I belong to the VFW, but it's a division up in New Jersey where we had our company, and I'm not active in it at all. I've recently become interested in and been invited to several historic 8th Air Force Historic Society meetings, which are held like once every 2 or 3 months at Langley Field in Virginia. And it's interesting to me to get together with these men. And just recently I did some speaking to the Fort Monroe military group involved in the legal aspects of future wars and POWs and what they might be involved in and expected to have happened to them. And I was also speaking at the Naval Weapons Station in Yorktown, and a similar situation. And just this past D-Day, June the 6th, I didn't speak at, but was invited to attend a luncheon where fellows were speaking about their D-Day experiences. And I think I will become a member of that when we get back from Maine in October. It's quite an interesting group of men, some pretty high-level guys who know much more than I did about the war, and I can learn something from them. It's a busy life for me and really enjoyable. You know, do you have any other?
Well, I was going to just answer I think a couple of general questions. How did the war experience as being a prisoner of war affect your life, for better or for worse, and how did it affect your future?
I think, like most of us do, first of all, it was not a traumatic experience for me. I was very fortunate. I had a good home life. And I think I was a fairly substantial, strong individual when I went into the service and was shot down. And interestingly enough, to me and to people when they hear it, when I was shot down and got out of the plane, finally got out because we lost our left wing, when I finally was able to get out of the spinning B-17, I was like ejected into the air, and once I opened to shoot, I had free fallen quite a ways because the plane was blowing up and falling apart around me. I free fell at least 10,000 feet. And the one thing it did was affect my hearing a little bit. I have a tinnitus condition. And, but I also, on the way down, thought, well, I'm pretty lucky. I got out of this, and I'm going to get a promotion. I'm going to go up a rank, and I'm going to make more money. And when I told that to a woman psychologist on a trip, a return of the Kriegieland trip in 1990, she was a psychologist attached to the VA hospital out there in California. She thought I was out of my mind. She insisted I must have trauma and some kind of traumatic experience as a result of being a POW, and I didn't. So I felt that getting through the war, getting through the POW camp, made me a person that was able to cope with stupid things that go wrong in life without getting all bent out of shape. It made me, you know, shrug my shoulders at things and say, this is not really very important. It's not going to change my life. And so being a POW, I think, made me a stronger person. And I believe that's how most of us feel. We are quite lucky. We call ourselves the lucky ones.
How has the government treated you since you come out, since the war?
Since the war, the government, I go to the VA hospital, and I have entitlements, and I get my glasses, and if I'm patient and can wait 6 or 8 months for a dental appointment, I could get my teeth cleaned and things like that, and I don't bother with that very much. But I primarily went down to them because I've had some angina. I have angina. And I had some blockages, and I had civilian doctors take care of the angioplasty, which I've had twice. And but the medication I'm supposed to take would cost me about $100 a month, maybe more at this point. So I thought, well, let's give the VA hospital a trial. So I went to the VA administration, and sure enough, I have a co-payment. I pay like $12 a month for 3 months worth of heart medication, which is very good because then we have more money to spend for trips and doing things and having fun, you know. The government, That's what they have done for me. They have treated me.
Have you dealt with the Air Force any?
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. I got out of service, right after the war, and I didn't retire from service, so I don't know of any entitlements or things like that I have.
What, now you've seen a lot of these young boys and girls in the last 60, 70 years of your life. What do you think about the young people today as compared to you when you were 20 years old or 18 and the war was coming up? I
think that the young people today have been very much sheltered from not having things, not getting everything they want all the time. I see it with my own grandchildren. Our boys, our 3 sons, like when I lost a job, they lost their allowance. They had to do little jobs. They had to earn, whatever they got. I believe that the young people today are very intelligent. They're certainly very computer knowledgeable and things like that. I'm not sure from an educational standpoint that they're getting very much about what has transpired in America historically, say particularly with the World War II. This was brought out in my discussions with people at this D-Day meeting just this past week, and there's a lack of communication or lack of information interchange about what's going on here. But I think that the young people today are extremely smart, extremely savvy, and I attribute that to the computer. They are much more knowledgeable about a lot of things than we are at our age. A bit spoiled, yes, but knowledgeable. And I think that they will make good citizens for the future. I really do. I think they've got a lot going for them. I don't know if that answers your question about my opinion.
Well, yes, that's perfect. Is there anything you want to tell us now that you didn't tell us in the interview that you'd like to say?
I just want to live a long time and have a lot more fun. I don't want this to end. And, everything does come to an end. Mm-hmm. My musical career has come to an end. And it kind of a shock when it did, when I realized that it was over. But I can't do all of this forever. The voice gives out. I have packed all my music up. It's all in a big box in the car back at Dulles Airport, which I'm giving to my niece up in New Jersey. And all of her 4 children are extremely musical. And hopefully this will find a good home with someone who will use it and appreciate it. Because if they went out to buy it today, it would be a bundle of money. It's all bound volumes. It's all good stuff.
Could you tell us a little bit about your well, it's not necessarily professional, but you had a singing career there for about 40 years. And where did you sing and why and how did that go?
Well, the singing career was really a profitable avocation.
It was.
I didn't sing. I sang professionally, but not as my full-time job, because singing music in any way, shape, or form is a very iffy kind of thing. Musicians, you have to know the right people, you have to have the proper backing, and a lot of people with a lot less talent make it big, and a lot of people with a lot more talent than I had don't make it at all. So it's a very political thing. You have to know the right people. And so I worked, as I said before, with Monroe Calculating, and I left them after 17 years to go with another small company, and that was relatively successful. And then I went with another company when that company, the first company was acquired, and when you're top management, you're out. In an acquisition, you're automatically out. You have to expect that. So it worked well. Each change was an improvement in my status for my family, for myself. And the last time it happened, we went into our own business, and our company was called Electromechanisms. We manufactured electromechanical devices, paper tape readers, and so forth for the automation industry. And we were relatively successful there in the important years when our 3 sons were going to college, and we had 3 of them in college at one time, with Hildegard working, and she did start working as soon as the first one was out of, into school, was able to go to school. And we worked together, and we had a pretty good life. Not a rich life, in the terms of dollars, but a rich life in the terms of home. And we really worked together. And our business eventually became obsolete. We closed the doors. I retired at 62 or 63, and I was retired a short time, and then I always say that Hildegard spoke to her boss and got me a job with her company, but it isn't true. Her boss wanted somebody to represent them, an older person in marketing, because he was having difficulty with young people getting through to older people in the industry. I knew nothing about the business. It was an aerial surveying business, and it was a case of presenting their potential and their facilities, what they could do for architectural firms and engineering firms and surveying companies and so forth. So that was what I did for another year and a half. Then we both retired together, and we've had a great time since.
Well, thanks a lot.
The chestnut trees, the wishing well, I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's light and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you.